a dirty, dirty player. She pulled Angel Reese out of air by her ponytail. Angel Reese is ready to fight. Just last game, I think 2 days ago, you guys, this girl was a dirty player. And that's all she did today was show how dirty she is. This is unfortunate. Beginning of this game, Sophie Cunningham is bringing the ball up the floor. She gets mugged, hit upside the head, knocked to the floor while dribbling the ball up the floor 75 feet away from the rim.
All right, narrative analysts, I need you to buckle up, because what I'm about to show you completely exposes the lies that have been circulating about Sophie Cunningham's injury. We're talking deleted social media posts, family cover-ups, and a truth so different from what you've been told that it's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about this entire controversy. Look, I've been filtering through the digital breadcrumbs for days now, and what I've uncovered is a story that goes way deeper than just an injury on the court. This isn't about what happened during that collision with Bria Hartley on August 17th. This is about what happened after, the family meltdown, the deleted posts, and Sophie's shocking response that nobody wanted you to see. Before we dive into the deleted evidence, smash that subscribe button because we're about to connect dots that other channels either missed or deliberately ignored. You're going to get the insider perspective that treats you like the intelligent analysts you are, not like casual fans who can be fed any narrative. Here's what they don't want you to know. Sophie Cunningham's family went nuclear on social media immediately after her MCL tear during the Fever's overtime win against Connecticut Sun. But here's the twist. Within hours, those posts started disappearing. And the reason why will absolutely shock you.
Emotional, guys. I'm hella mad. Hartley need to be suspended on a major level completely. Probably at this point, she's more dirtier than Dejanay Carey. Stephanie White is extremely emotional after this hard-fought game. Sophie Cunningham family is extremely pissed off. Look at this. Instantly into the game. Instantly. Immediately. They had a target to hurt Sophie. She was targeted by this team.
The temperature of the online conversation was absolutely volcanic. Sophie's mother Paula posted a scathing attack calling Bria Hartley disgruntled and plain mean, claiming she had a pattern of targeting players. Her sister Lindsay tore into the WNBA's officiating standards, demanding they focus on protecting athletes instead of fining players for speaking out. But then something unprecedented happened. The posts started vanishing. One by one, the family's most explosive accusations against Hartley just disappeared. And when I started following this digital trail, what I discovered changed everything. So what's fact and what's speculation? Let's break it down with the evidence I've uncovered. Sophie Cunningham herself, the actual victim of this injury, came forward and did something that stunned her own family. She publicly defended Bria Hartley, calling her a good friend and stating that the injury was completely accidental. Think about that for a second. While her family was painting Hartley as a dirty player who destroys careers, Sophie was telling a completely different story. And according to my sources, Sophie specifically asked her mother to remove those critical posts because they didn't represent the truth of what happened.
Injury. Normally people will hold higher in their knee if it's a knee ligament injury. It looks like she might have either broke or either ruptured her patella. Just sums up everything. Like, we weren't going to win this game if Sophie Cunningham was healthy. This isn't like, oh, we lost because of a Sophie Cunningham injury. We were down 17 points when she got injured. This happens.
This medical analysis adds credibility to Sophie's defense of Hartley, but it also raises bigger questions about the narrative that was being constructed around this injury. When you have expert medical opinions suggesting this was a legitimate basketball play gone wrong, it makes the family's initial reaction look, well, emotionally driven, rather than factually based. But the story doesn't end there. I've been reading the signals from inside the organization, and there's evidence that Sophie was actually frustrated with how her injury was being weaponized for drama. The digital breadcrumbs suggest she felt her family's posts were creating unnecessary controversy during an already difficult time. Let me pause here for a second, because if you're getting value from this insider analysis, hit that like button. We're about to get into the really explosive stuff about why this family drama matters for the entire WNBA landscape. The angle nobody's covering is how this deleted post situation exposes something much bigger about manufactured WNBA drama. While Sophie's family was creating viral content with their accusations, other channels and content creators were amplifying these posts without waiting for the full story. They were building entire narratives around deleted evidence.
Sophie's mother, Paula, Hartley is a disgruntled player having trouble everywhere she goes. She's plain mean and plays out of control. His sister Lindsay and her mom Paula. At WNBA, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game, protect your athletes.
This family reaction perfectly captures the emotional intensity of the moment, but what they missed is that Sophie herself was working behind the scenes to correct the record. The fact that she had to ask her own mother to delete posts criticizing her good friend Bria Hartley tells you everything about how this story was being distorted. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, a different picture emerges. Sophie's podcast, Show Me Something, became the primary source for these corrections, where she clarified that her relationship with Hartley remained strong despite the injury. This wasn't about dirty play, this was about basketball contact that unfortunately resulted in a season-ending MCL tear. But here's what the other channels won't tell you. The Indiana Fever organization was reportedly relieved when Sophie made these clarifying statements because they were concerned about the narrative spiraling out of control. With the team sitting at 19-16 with an 87.1% playoff probability, they couldn't afford to have their injured star player becoming the center of a controversy that wasn't based in reality. The temperature of the online conversation suggests something deeper is happening here, about how WNBA drama gets manufactured and amplified. When families post in emotional moments, those posts become content fuel for channels looking for viral material. But when the actual facts emerge and posts get deleted, those same channels rarely go back to correct the record. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The initial targeting accusations, the emotional injury footage, the referee criticism, it all creates this perfect storm of viral content. But notice how this commentary focuses on the drama, without considering that Sophie herself might have a different perspective on what happened. What they missed is that Sophie's defense of Hartley actually makes this story more interesting, not less. Think about it. What kind of character does it take to defend someone publicly when your own family is calling them a dirty player? What does that tell you about Sophie's integrity and her actual relationship with Hartley? Now let's talk about what this reveals about the current state of WNBA discourse. The fact that authentic family emotions get weaponized for content, then have to be walked back when cooler heads prevail, shows how the league's most dramatic moments often aren't what they appear to be. I've been connecting the dots here, and this pattern repeats constantly in WNBA coverage. Emotional reactions create viral moments, but the truth that emerges later gets buried because it's less dramatic than the initial outrage. That's exactly why we need to be filtering out the noise and looking at what actually happened. But here's the inevitable question this raises. If Sophie had to correct her own family's public statements about her injury, what does that tell us about other WNBA controversies where we only heard one side of the story? So what's fact and what's speculation? Let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the online chatter is too loud to ignore about how this incident reflects broader issues with how WNBA content gets created and consumed. There are whispers that Sophie's team was concerned about how quickly the injury became about everything except her actual recovery. When you're dealing with a season-ending MCL tear, the last thing you need is your injury becoming a political football for league criticism. The digital breadcrumbs suggest that Sophie's clarifying statements weren't just about defending Hartley, they were about reclaiming control of her own narrative. And that's something we're seeing more of from WNBA players who are tired of having their stories told for them.
Is a dirty player. She pulled Angel Reese out of air by her ponytail. Angel Reese is ready to fight. Just last game, I think 2 days ago, you guys, this girl was a dirty player. And that's all she did today was show how dirty she is. This is unfortunate. Beginning of this game, Sophie Cunningham is bringing the ball up the floor. She gets mugged, hit upside the head, knocked to the floor while dribbling the ball up the floor 75 feet away from the rim.
This is the kind of pattern recognition that Sophie was trying to interrupt. When every injury becomes evidence of systematic targeting, when every collision becomes a conspiracy, the actual basketball gets lost. And according to my sources, that's exactly what frustrated Sophie about how her injury was being discussed. But that brings us to the inevitable question: where does this leave the legitimate concerns about player safety and officiating standards? Because make no mistake, those concerns are real, even if this particular incident wasn't the smoking gun some people wanted it to be. If you're still with me at this point, drop a comment, because we're about to dive into the bigger implications of what this deleted post situation reveals about WNBA media dynamics. The truth is, Sophie Cunningham's injury and her family's reaction exposed something uncomfortable about how we consume WNBA content. We want the drama, we want the outrage, we want the conspiracy theories. But when the actual people involved try to inject nuance and truth into the conversation, it gets less attention than the initial explosive claims. This isn't just about Sophie and Bria Hartley anymore. This is about a league where manufactured controversies often overshadow the real stories that deserve our attention. And Sophie's decision to defend Hartley, to the point of asking her family to delete critical posts, should make us question how many other WNBA narratives are built on incomplete information. What they missed while focusing on the deleted posts is that Sophie's actions reveal something powerful about the character and relationships that exist in this league. Players who compete fiercely against each other can still maintain respect and friendship even when injuries occur. Now, I've been filtering through the noise around Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's response to these kinds of incidents, and there's evidence that the league is aware of how quickly basketball plays become content controversies. The challenge is maintaining competitive intensity while preventing every collision from becoming a referendum on player safety. Official sources won't tell you this, but if you follow the digital breadcrumbs, it's clear that Sophie's clarifying statements were appreciated by league officials who were concerned about the narrative around her injury spiraling into something that didn't reflect reality. The temperature of the online conversation suggests we're at a crossroads in WNBA coverage. Do we want authentic stories about real relationships and legitimate competition? Or do we want manufactured drama that has to be corrected later when the truth emerges? Sophie Cunningham chose authenticity. She chose to defend her friend even when it contradicted her family's emotional reaction. She chose to correct the record even when the false narrative was more dramatic. And that choice should tell us something about the kind of coverage this league deserves. But here's what this story really exposes: the gap between what actually happens in WNBA locker rooms and relationships versus what gets portrayed in viral content. When Sophie called Bria Hartley a good friend and defended her publicly, she was giving us a window into the real dynamics that exist between these players. The angle nobody's covering is how Sophie's injury actually strengthened the argument for the kind of competitive basketball that creates these collision situations. If the players themselves understand that injuries can happen without malicious intent, maybe we need to adjust our expectations about what dirty play actually looks like. This family criticism of the WNBA's focus on fines over player protection represents legitimate concerns that exist independently of whether Bria Hartley is actually a dirty player. Sophie's decision to correct these statements doesn't invalidate broader questions about officiating standards and player safety protocols. So where does this leave us? Sophie Cunningham's deleted post story isn't just about one injury or one family's emotional reaction. It's about how truth and manufacturing drama compete in the current WNBA media landscape. The fact that Sophie had to publicly contradict her own family's narrative should make every WNBA content creator pause and ask, are we amplifying authentic stories, or are we feeding on manufactured outrage that doesn't reflect reality? I've been connecting these dots for you because this is exactly the kind of meta-analysis that other channels either miss or deliberately ignore. They want the clicks that come from controversy, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with getting the story right. That brings us to the inevitable question about what this means for Indiana Fever's playoff run. With Sophie out for the season but the team still holding strong playoff positioning, her injury becomes less about controversy and more about how the team adapts without one of their key players. But the real story here isn't about basketball strategy, it's about character. Sophie Cunningham showed more integrity in one clarifying statement than most content creators show in entire careers. She chose truth over viral drama, friendship over family loyalty, and accuracy over outrage. Okay, now let's get into rumor territory. Nothing is officially confirmed, but the online chatter is too loud to ignore about how this incident might influence how WNBA injuries get covered going forward. There are whispers that Sophie's team was so frustrated with the initial coverage that they're considering more proactive communication strategies for future injuries. When you have to correct your own family's public statements, it suggests that controlling the narrative around player injuries has become more complex than it used to be. The digital breadcrumbs suggest that other WNBA players took notice of how Sophie handled this situation. According to sources, there's growing respect for how she managed to defend her friend while still acknowledging the seriousness of her injury. So what's the bottom line here? Sophie Cunningham's deleted post story reveals that the most interesting WNBA narratives often aren't the ones that go viral initially. The real story is in the corrections, the clarifications, and the moments when players choose authenticity over manufactured drama. The temperature of the online conversation suggests that fans are hungry for this kind of insider analysis that treats them like intelligent observers rather than drama consumers. You want to understand the real dynamics, the actual relationships, and the truth behind the viral moments. That's exactly why this channel exists, to filter out the noise and give you the kind of meta-analysis that helps you understand what's really happening in WNBA culture. Because at the end of the day, the deleted post story isn't about what got removed, it's about what Sophie chose to say instead. If this kind of insider perspective is valuable to you, make sure you're subscribed because this is just the beginning of connecting dots that other channels either miss or deliberately ignore. We're going to keep diving into the stories behind the stories, the truth behind the viral moments, and the real relationships that define WNBA culture. What do you think about Sophie's decision to defend Bria Hartley publicly? Do you respect her for choosing truth over family loyalty, or do you think she should have stayed silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to hear how the narrative analysts in this community process this kind of complex situation. And if you found value in this deep dive into the deleted post story, share this with someone who needs to understand how WNBA narratives really get constructed and deconstructed. Because the real story is always more interesting than the manufactured drama, and Sophie Cunningham just proved that authenticity still matters in a world obsessed with viral outrage.